Hello, good beans, and welcome back to Midnight Requiem. Today we'll be talking about Robert Norman Ross, otherwise known as Bob Ross, who was an American painter and art instructor who created and hosted the Joy of Painting and instructional television program that aired from 1983 to 1994 on PBS in the United States, CBC in Canada, and similar channels in Latin America, Europe, and elsewhere. Ross was subsequently become widely known through his Prometheus internet presence. Ross was born in Daytona Beach, Florida, to Jack and Ollie Ross, a carpenter and a waitress, respectively, and raised in Orlando, Florida. As an adolescent, Ross was cared for injured animals, including armadillos, snakes, alligators, and squirrels, one of which was later featured in several episodes of his television show. He had a half-brother, Jim, whom he mentioned in passing on his show. Ross dropped out of high school in the 9th grade while working as a carpenter with his father. He lost part of his left index finger, which did not affect his ability to later hold a palette while painting. In 1961, at 18 years old, Ross enlisted in the United States Air Force and was put into service as a medical records technician. He rose to the rank of Master Sergeant and served as the first sergeant of the clinic at Elsin Air Force Base in Alaska, where he first saw the snow and mountains that later appear as recurring themes in his paintings. He developed his quick painting technique during brief daily work breaks, having held military positions that required him to act tough and mean. The guy who makes you scrub the latrine, the guy who makes you make your bed, and the guy who screams at you for being late to work. Ross decided he would not raise his voice when he left the military. During his 20-year Air Force career, Ross developed an interest in painting after attending an art class at the Anchorage USO Club. He found himself frequently at odds with many of his paintings instructors who were more interested in abstract painting. Ross said, "They'll tell you what makes a tree, but they wouldn't tell you how to paint a tree." Ross was working as a part-time bartender when he discovered a TV show called The Magic of Oil Painting, hosted by German painter Bill Alexander. Alexander used a 16th century painting style called alla prima, Italian for a first attempt, widely known as wet on wet, that allowed him to create a painting within 30 minutes. Ross studied and mastered the technique, began painting, and then successfully selling Alaskan landscapes that he would paint on novelty gold mining pans. Eventually, Ross's income from sales surpassed his military salary. He retired from the Air Force in 1981 as a master sergeant. He returned to Florida, studied painting with Alexander, joined his Alexander Magic Art Supplies Company, and became a traveling salesman and tutor. Annette Kowalski, who had attended one of his sessions in Clearwater, Florida, convinced Ross he could succeed on his own. Ross, his wife Kowalski, and Walt, her husband, pooled their savings to create his company, which struggled at first. Ross was noted for his permed hair, which he ultimately disliked but kept after he had integrated into the company logo. In 1982, a station in Falls Church, Virginia, aired a taping of his art class as a pilot, and 60 PBS stations signed up for the show in the first year. In 1983, PBS station WIPB lured him to Muncie, Indiana, with the promise of creative freedom, and he found a kinship with the staff. He moved home to Florida in 1989, but continued to travel to Muncie every 3 months to tape the show. Ross said he did the show for free and made his income from how-to books, videotapes, and art supplies. The show ran from January 11, 1983 to May 17, 1994. But reruns still continue to appear in many broadcast areas and countries, including the non-commercial digital sub-channel network Create and the streaming services Hulu. In the United Kingdom, the BBC reran episodes during the COVID-19 pandemic while most viewers were in lockdown at home. During each half-hour segment, Ross would instruct viewers in the quick wet-on-wet oil painting technique, painting the scene without sketching it first. but creating the image directly from his imagination in real time. He explained his limited paint palette, deconstructing the process into simple steps. Artist and art critic Meriscore compared Ross to Fred Rogers, host of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, noting that Ross' soft voice and the slow pace of his speech were similar. With help from Kowalski's, Ross used his television show to promote a line of art supplies and class recordings, building what would become a 15 million business, Bob Ross Inc., which would ultimately expand to include classes taught by other artists trained in his methods. Following Ross's death, ownership of the company was passed to Kowalski's. Ross also filmed wildlife, squirrels, and particularly usually in his garden, and he would often take an injured or abandoned squirrels and other animals. Small animals often appeared on his Joy of Painting canvases. Ross painted an estimated 30,000 paintings during his lifetime. Despite the unusually high supply of original paintings, Bob Ross' original paintings are scarce on the art market, with sale prices of the paintings averaging in the thousands of dollars and frequently topping $10,000. The major auction houses have never sold any Ross's paintings, and Bob Ross Inc. continues to own many of the ones he painted for the joy of painting, as Ross himself was opposed to having his work turned into financial instruments. A Walk in the Woods, Ross' first television painting, was sold in the pledge drive offering shortly after the first season aired. It is, as of September 2023, in the hands of Ryan Nelson, a Minnesota-based art dealer who acquired it from its original buyer and has been the primary dealer for the few Ross paintings that have reached the open art market. Ross used a wet-on-wet oil painting technique of painting over a thin base layer of wet paint. The painting could progress without first drying. The technique used a limited selection of tools and colors that did not require a large investment in expensive equipment. Ross frequently recommended odorless paint thinner, odorless mineral spirits, for brush cleaning. Combining the wet painting method with the use of large 1- and 2-inch brushes, as well as painting knives, allowed the painter to quickly complete a landscape scene. Ross painted the 3 versions of almost every painting featured on his show. The first was painted prior to taping and set on an easel off camera during filming, where Ross used it as a reference to create the second copy, which viewers actually watched him paint. After filming the episode, he painted a more detailed version for inclusion in his instructional books. The versions were each marked on the side or back of the canvas. Kowalski for the initial version, TV for the version painted during the TV show, and book for the book version. Ross dedicated the first episode of the second season of The Joy of Painting to Bill Alexander, explaining that years ago, Bill taught me this fantastic wet-on-wet technique, and I feel as though he gave me a precious gift, and I'd like to share that gift with you. As Ross' popularity grew, his relationship with Alexander became increasingly strained. He betrayed me, Alexander told the New York Times in 1991. I invented wet-on-wet. I trained him, and he thinks he can do it better. Art historians have pointed out that the wet-on-wet, or a la prima technique, actually originated in Flanders during the 15th century and was used by Frans Hals, Diego Velázquez, Carvigo, Paul Sinzer, John Everett Méliès, John Singer Sargent, and Claude Monet, among many others. Ross was well known for his phrases he tended to repeat while painting, such as, "Let's add some happy little trees." In most episodes, Ross would not note that he enjoyed cleaning his paintbrush. He was fond of drying off a brush dipped in odorless thinner by striking it against a can of thinner, then striking it against a box on early seasons of the show and a trash can on a later seasons. Occasionally, he would strike the brush hard on the trash can, saying he hit the bucket, and then on the easel, he would smile and often laugh aloud as he said to beat the devil out of it. He also used a lightly sanded palette to avoid reflections from the studio lighting. In every show, Ross wore jeans and a plain light-colored shirt, which he believed would be a timeless look, and spoke as if addressing one viewer. When asked about his relaxed and calm approach, he said,
hint of
I got a
green.
letter from somebody
It's too
here
far away to
a
have
while
much
back,
green.
and they said, Bob, everything in your world
And we
seems
can
to be
lift it up.
happy. That's for sure. That's why I paint.
Okay, let me
It's
clean your
because
neck.
I can create the kind
And
of
today,
world
to tell you
that I
what,
want,
let's
and
use
I
a
can make
1-inch
this
brush,
world as happy as
and I'll
I
just
want
go
it.
right into that.
Shoot, if you want
And
bad
just pull it
stuff,
through.
watch the
Just
news.
to load a little paper.
The landscape he painted, typically mountains, lakes, snow,
Just
and
like
log
so.
cabin scenes, were
Let's go
inspired
to
by
the
his
canvas.
years in Alaska,
Now you have to
where
make a
he
big
was
decision.
stationed
Where's
for
your
the
little
majority
foothills
of his
live?
Air Force career.
Maybe
He
let's start
repeatedly
right in.
said
Maybe
everyone
just
has
using a
inherent
corner of the brush.
artistic talent
Maybe
and
they
could
just come
become
right
an accomplished artist given time, practice, and
There they
encouragement. Ross would say, "We don't make mistakes.
Wherever you want.
We just have happy accidents." In
Just sort of-
2014, the
sort of
blog
pull it straight down.
538 analyzed
Turn
381
it over, use the
episodes
other corner.
in which
If one
Ross
gets-
painted live,
gets
concluding that
empty,
91%
turn it
of Ross's
pull straight
paintings
down.
contained at least one tree, 44% included clouds,
But
39%
very important here.
included
See this little
mountains,
misty
and
area
34%
right here?
included
You
mountain
wanna
lakes.
save that mist
By
that's
his
between
own
the foothills and the
estimation,
mountain.
Ross
If you-
completed more than
if you kill that misty
30,000
area, these
paintings.
foothills are gonna look
His
like
work
they're
rarely
right
contained
up
human
against
subjects or
the
signs
mountain.
of
You don't
human
want
life.
that.
On rare occasions, he would incorporate a cabin
then,
sometimes with a chimney,
time to wash
but
your
without
brush.
smoke and possibly
I'll put off washing the
unoccupied.
brushes till I'm about to run out.
Ross was married 3 times and had 2
In good
children, a child he fathered from a relationship he had as a teenager,
And just beat
and a
the
son,
devil.
Robert Stephen.
Now, I want to
Steve
create
Ross,
mist at the base of this
with
foothill.
his first wife,
here,
Vivian
all we're gonna
Ridge.
do-
Steve, also a talented
attention.
painter, occasionally
Pay
appeared
attention
on The
here
Joy
to
of Painting
angles.
and became a
This
Ross
foothill's gonna
certified
sort of come down
instructor.
this way.
Steve appeared on camera in the last
like
episode of season 1, in which he read series of general how-to questions sent
There we
in
go.
by viewers during the season. Bob answered
how
them
soft
one
that makes
at
the
a
base of
time,
that little
technique
son
by
of a gun.
technique, until he had completed an entire painting.
Gentle little
Ross
upward
and
lifts.
Ridge's marriage ended in
Gentle,
divorce in
gentle,
1977, allegedly due to Ross's infidelity. Ross and his second
then,
wife, Jan,
maybe we'll put one
had no
coming down
children
this
together.
way.
In 1992, Jan
Same
died
color,
of cancer.
only darker.
In 1995,
Same color, only
2 months
darker.
before his death, Ross married for a 3rd time to Linda Brown. Ross
As
was
things
very
get closer to
secretive
the
about
landscape,
his
they
life
should
and
get
had a
darker
great
in value.
preference for privacy.
Little
Some
darker in
of
value as they
only
get
a
closer.
few interviews with his close-knit
mix these
circle
colors on your
of
brush.
friends
Shoot, no
and
big deal.
family can be found in the
Green.
2011 PBS documentary
Not much green, it's too
Bob
far
Ross,
away.
The Happy Painter.
Now maybe-
Other conversations were destroyed
this one
as part
lives
of legal settlement
right along in here
between
somewhere.
Ross's family and Bob Ross
There he
Inc.
goes.
Bob Ross Inc. is protected of his intellectual
he goes.
property
So
and his
this one's a little
privacy to
darker,
this day.
so it'll stand out.
Ross was
Now,
not a
sometimes
member of
you
any
wanna make something
specific
that looks
or
like a
organized
individual
religion.
trees. You can
He
just take a brush and
frequently
turn it
expressed his
on the
belief
end,
in
see?
a
Pull down
creator,
and it makes
God,
a
and
more
often
distinct
closed
thing,
his shows with
depending on
a
the
wish
effect
that
that you
God
wanna
bless his viewers.
Maybe
A
this comes
cigarette smoker for
right
most of his
in the middle.
adult life, Ross expected to die young
You just
and
sort of have
had
to make a big
several
decision on
health
the side
problems over
where
the
it lives.
course of his life. He died at the age
Look at
of
there.
52
That
on
easy,
July
though.
4th, 1995 in Orlando,
I'll show
Florida,
you
due
something
to
that's funny.
complications from
Maybe you
lymphoma.
decided here,
His remains are
Maybe there's a
interred
little
at
separation and this
Woodlawn
one comes
Memorial Park in Gotha,
right on
Florida,
down here.
under
So
a
you can-
plaque
you
marked
can sort of
Bob
pull them
Ross,
apart to
television
make more than
artist.
one.
Ross kept his
That easy.
diagnosis a secret from the general
You just
public.
take 'em wherever
His
you want 'em to
lymphoma was not known outside of his circle of family and
super
friends
way to
until
illustrate
after his death.
some happy little
Ross's
foothills that live
likeness
back
has
here in the
become part
distance.
of popular culture,
Maybe
with
over
his
here
image
this one
spoofed
comes
in
up
television programs, films, and video games like Family Guy,
What do
The
you think?
Boondocks, Deadpool 2, and Smite.
Whatever
Google
you
celebrated the
just put it.
70th anniversary of his birth with Google Doodle on October 29,
Now then,
2012.
with our 2-inch
It
brush,
portrayed Ross
still
painting a
paying attention to
depiction
the lay
of
of
the
the
letter
land.
G with a landscape in the background. As always, my good being, be loving and caring to each other. Please make sure to like the video, subscribe, and leave comments. Have a wonderful day.